The opioid crisis throughout this country has undoubtedly reached conditions of epidemic proportions in recent years. Opioid abuse is the deadliest drug epidemic in U.S. history, as it kills tens of thousands of people every year. For every person that is affected by this, there's often even more children who find themselves in the crosshairs of the epidemic. This topic is something that I've enjoyed studying and researching these past few weeks, as I feel very strongly about advocating for women to stay clean during their pregnancies. The research that I conducted was mostly centered around reading and studying the blog posts and journals that were written by parents or caregivers who were, firsthand experiencing raising a child born prenatally exposed to opioids. And focusing on the people that are actually experiencing it firsthand and not solely relying on different studies completed on this, I feel as if I was really able to get a better understanding of what advice the caregivers were looking for or would need. In my brochure, the first section that I talked about is titled, "What Should I Expect?" And that's kind of a question from the perspective of the caregiver. And the research that I explained throughout this section included different ways that infants can experience various short-term and long-term effects throughout their childhood development as a result of prenatal substance exposure. For example, opioid use during pregnancy can specifically result in a syndrome called neonatal abstinence syndrome. So I listed that here with some of the effects or the symptoms that you should look out for as a caregiver, including irritability, tremors, seizures, vomiting, or shrill crying by the infant or by the newborn. I also included that an estimated 32,000 babies were born with it in 2014 in the U.S. So that's just a way that I used the research to explain kind of what caregivers should look out for when taking on this sort of responsibility. In the "How Can I Meet Their Needs" section, which is here, I really emphasized actually ways that I believe caregivers should be informed on different treatments that could be available to their child based on their specific disease or stage that they're in because of this. An example of some research that I included in this section included ways that caregivers can support the speech development of their child going through different stages, including this one specifically, like the early childhood stage of maybe preschool age. That included different ways to support, including talking to the baby or the toddler or the preschooler at all times, or responding to different ways that they speak, regardless of if it seems like it makes sense, and starting to name items unfamiliar to them aloud regularly, and reading books together to help with, getting familiar with sight words and understanding how to read. In the next section, which is how the importance of quality care, I talked about the important needs that the child would have and how meeting those needs can have positive effects on them. I used my research in this section. Basically, I used the findings related to prenatally opioid exposed children and the foster care system to hopefully ensure caregivers that they are what's best for the child throughout their developing years in this sort of situation. For the design or the fact that I used from the foster care system included that 80% of children in the foster care system come from home with substance abuse issues, or are going through or have gone through opioid withdrawal, or are growing up addicted. So that's just a fact that I hopefully use to really insinuate my call to action toward the end of my brochure. The design choices that I used, I tried to structure the information as well as the pictures that I use in the most effective positions, like relevant to what I was talking about when I was talking about it. So I chose blue. I know the blue didn't print on my copy. I guess my printer only did the pictures in color, but I tried it a few times, and on my initial submission online, my digital copy is blue, though. I chose that background as a color because I feel like it's kind of a softer color, and it's often associated with infant care or health related information. I guess that's just how it happened in my brain. I used the photos to demonstrate the potential effects of the child being exposed at different stages throughout their development and ways to support them. I believe that the most effective locations to distribute this specific brochure and information would be in small clinics like urgent care facilities and pediatrician offices or even Planned Parenthood offices. Those who would benefit from the information provided in this brochure include parents or caregivers who would be likely to visit these types of facilities for child care assistance. To touch on why I think Planned Parenthood locations would specifically create maximum impact on the intended audience is because future mothers dealing with addiction may find themselves struggling to see the potential of being able to provide proper care to the child once they're born. Having access to resources and advice and information like this may be helpful in providing them assurance in their abilities to provide a quality life for their child.